Welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom. Now, you may be wondering why I have an umbrella, and that's because, well, it's a little rainy where I'm at, and I just wanted to, something just told me to do this video, right? So, what I want to talk about is, well, connecting with somebody that you love or reconnecting with somebody that you love, honestly, right? And normally people don't appreciate things until it's gone, until they lose it, so on and so forth. Now, an example I want to give is when I was in the military, right? When I got into the military, got my handy dandy journal here. So when I was in the military, I was in love with this woman. I thought we were going to get married. I worked extremely hard. I mean, although we shared journals with two other people, so on and so forth, or me and some other guy, it's a long story. It didn't work out, and that's okay. Completely okay. I'm completely over it. However, when I was in, I did fall for another woman. Now, I'm not going to mention her name, although she is extremely beautiful still to this day, and she dances like Shakira, but it's a whole other story. So, anyways, what I would like to say is that while I was in that relationship, I got, well, threatened while I was there. So I don't know if she thought that I wasn't into her or something happened where I called things off, but what happened was I started to get intimidated by other people because I was of a lower rank. And if you fraternize, i.e., date somebody above your rank, it's called fraternization, right? And you could get in trouble for it, so on and so forth, so on and so forth. And I would get this from multiple people, so it kind of pushed me away from, just keeping the both of us safe because we would both get in trouble. Now, later on, we ended up connecting, so on and so forth. However, it was, due to an emergency. And granted, there was some things that were misconstrued because I paid a compliment, and then all of a sudden she was upset about things. And I was racking my brain because I can sometimes be a literal person when it comes to relationships, right? Especially when I care about somebody. And so I remember that night very vividly, because it was the next night. I ended up getting a 6-pack of beer, so on and so forth. I stayed in a separate room, all this other stuff. And she screams out, "He's an alcoholic." And I was like, I am not an alcoholic, woman, but you drive me crazy. And I'm trying to figure out how we can make this work. I want to have a baseball team, soccer team. If you want to have babies, I want to have babies. And we can have a lot of fun making babies, if you know what I'm saying. So, it didn't work out, but there was loss, right? And then I ended up in another relationship, right? Where I was just like, this woman just knows what to say. She knows what to do. She's intelligent, so on and so forth. And she could dance, which was amazing. I'm a sucker for a good dancer. And so, we hit it off, but things weren't perfect, and nothing has to be perfect, right? But what happens, right? So let's back up a little bit. I got intimidated, right? I got intimidated. That was what pushed me away from the other relationship. Then I ended up reconnecting, but there was a misunderstanding, right? Or a loss in translation, right? And then, of course, later on down the road, I fell in deep love, right? And it was almost to a connection where, like, if she was somewhere and she was like, "I need your help," I would just know where she was. Like, think Taken, right? With Liam Neeson, where he just knows how to find his daughter, so on and so forth. We kind of had that connection, right? But I knew that once we separated, that it was okay for her to do her thing and for me to do mine because we had closure and everything else. Now, you may be asking, well, what's the topic? Why are we talking about love and all this other stuff? Well, hold on, let me reach in here. So when it comes to, the topic and everything, we have to look at what's happening in the world right now. There's people threatening about war. There's this, there's that. There's a new pope. Trump is doing all these crazy things. And, they keep talking about nuclear war. Well, let me tell you something. If you love where you live, if there's a nuclear war, there won't be nothing left to love. Think about that for a second, right? So if we come together, or if you're able to reconnect and rekindle relationships, right? You don't have to wear a big hat so nobody kisses you, so on and so forth. Keep your distance, so on and so forth. That's not a punch at Trump. However, but it did happen, right? And so how do you speak the language of love, right? And so I was talking to a couple people, and they're like, "Mike, so like, what do I do?" And so on and so forth. And I'll give you an example of my friend Dion. Now, Dion wanted to hook up with this Spanish girl, so on and so forth, and he didn't know what to do. I'll call her Loca for right now. And so I was like, all right, this is what you're going to do. You're going to say this, this, and this. You're going to lean in, etc. And then I went to her and I was like, do you like this guy? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So if he tried to do something, would it be okay? Yes or no? She said yes. And then I looked at Dion. I said, go for it. And he knew what to do. And it was great. It was like magic. And so I, understood not only just behavior, but what can make or break a person, right? And quite honestly, I think men love harder than women because quite honestly, half the men out there that aren't getting that connection, so on and so forth, because whether or not they're scared to reveal who they truly are, how they feel, because they may get, called weak, so on and so forth, or soft, etc. Like, for example, going back to the military, I used to tell my mother, yeah, I cried when I got my EGA. A bunch of people did, men and women, so on and so forth. It didn't matter if you were gay, straight, or whatever, right? We all cried, right? But then you saw a professional ceremony, and that was because of psychology, right? Psychology would dictate that if somebody sees you crying, you must be weak, and that's not true. As Dr. Jordan Peterson once said, meek does not mean weak. So you have to understand these things, right? And because I was in the Marines, so on and so forth, and we kind of get trained like Spartans. If you study your history, Spartans were encouraged to love one another because they knew that people would fight harder for those that they love and they care about, right? However, what I've come to realize now and what's happening is that there's so much individualism. There's lying, there's bullshit, there's this, that, and the third. There's indifferences. You're white, you're black, you're this, you're Chinese, you're Indian. I don't like you, I don't like this, blah, blah, blah. But if you break down E equals MC squared, or you were to say you're spiritual and we're all made from light, are you going to say you don't like the color of the sun when it comes out? Or the color of the moon that allows you to have a romantic evening? No. You're going to freaking appreciate it, along with the black sky and all the stars. Whether you're looking at Mars, Venus, Jupiter, whatever the case may be, and whatever color they are, you're going to appreciate it, right? And that's what you have to do in life, right? Now, when it comes to speaking the language of love, the reason why I'm talking about this, I'm going to go to my notebook here real quick just to make sure I'm on track. When people say things, you have to actually mean it because people can feel or sense bullshit, right? And I'm not just talking about changing the tone of your voice, but actually meaning it, right? Because yes, you can trick an animal, a pet, so on and so forth. Like, for instance, you can say something to a dog, right? And you could be like, oh, you're the stupidest fucking thing in the world. Oh my God. But if you say it that way, the dog will not understand. But if you yell at the dog and you're negative, the dog will be scared, so on and so forth, or react in an opposite way, etc. Humans are a little bit more complex. And when it comes to the language of love and carrying somebody's heart, so on and so forth, or holding it for a time, right? It's one of those things that can literally cause someone to either make them or break them, right? If you're doing crazy making, right? I don't love you, this, that, and the third, fuck you, this, that, and the third, blah, blah, blah. Excuse me for my taboo language. That was doctored by Sigmund Freud, if I remember correctly, when I went to UPW at Tony Robbins. But, it's one of those things where if you're doing that, but you want somebody to treat you nicely, and then you're complaining that they're not treating you nicely, look at your behavior. Look at what you're saying. Look at what you're doing, right? Yeah, you may say, oh, yeah, good morning. Hey, how's it going? Oh, yeah, no, I love you. Bye. And then you walk out the door and you're like, I can't fucking stand my life, right? I mean, think about it, right? I was watching these guys talk, so on and so forth. And because I'm fascinated with, micro expressions, if you've seen my other episode, I forgot which one it was, where I talked about Paul Ackman, who they created the show Lie to Me, who really did study micro expressions, right? But there's other things that went into it, right? So I'm watching all this, and the guy that's opposed from him, so on and so forth, and I noticed a couple things. The guy that's on the opposite side of the table goes, oh, more women for me or you? And the guy literally puts this look, it's just a brief, quick reaction on his face, and he looks down and he covers his wedding ring hand, right? His left hand where there's supposed to be a wedding ring. And maybe that wasn't supposed to come out that way at that time, at that moment, so on and so forth. but the tempo, the pace, everything ended up lining up, and it told me something. There was shame there, right? Or they were hiding something, or embarrassed. Why? Because after the saying happened, it quickly triggered a micro expression on the face, but then the whole body reacted, right? Right? So, he covers the hand, he's trying to hide it, etc. Why did you say that? Maybe it was something that was not supposed to be mentioned, so on and so forth. Maybe something went wrong. Maybe you don't know the whole story or whatever. But when it comes to finding freedom, I noticed that on your path to success, people can normally tend to forget about the others that are with them because they're so driven to pursue something, right? So you may be putting in 18 hours a day, so on and so forth, but forgetting about your kids. You may be putting 18 hours a day or 12 hours a day, so on and so forth, and forgetting about your significant other, whether that's a husband or wife. It really doesn't matter. Husband and husband, wife and wife, whatever the case may be, so on and so forth, right? But because one person is putting so much effort forward, they neglect the other side. And if they don't communicate correctly, i.e. using the language of love and understanding, well, then there's going to be how do I say this? A loss in translation, right? One of the favorite things I like to say is from Ocean's 12, I think, where Matt Damon's trying to talk with, Rusty and Danny Ocean, and he tries to say something and it's completely wrong. What's it called? They called it lost in translation, right? But that's what's happening, right? And I see that all the time, right? Oh, well, why don't you do this? Aren't you a mind reader? And somebody just starts, and you just like, I'm not a mind reader. Please tell me what happened, so on and so forth. Right? Instead of communicating, hey, I'm going to do this for us. You can come with me. You can assist me. We can build an empire together, or you can forget it, so on and so forth, right? But if the other person isn't acknowledging the work that goes into it, right? The effort that goes into it, right? If all they care about is money and status and all this other stuff, and they're waiting for you to hit some finish line, I don't think that's the person for you, right? Why do I got to do something? I got you. You're going to do all the work, etc. That's not a good way to develop a relationship. That's not a good way to establish love. So, when it comes to speaking the language of love, have understanding, ask questions. For crying out loud, be yourself. They fell in love with you in the first place because you were yourself, and then somewhere along the line, one of you decided to convince one another to change. So if you thought this was interesting, go ahead and leave a comment down below. It's starting to come down out here, but hit the like button if this helped you. And if you want more topics on body language, human behavior, etc., feel free to reach out to me. Till next time, my friends. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.